Being young and rebellious often means being young and dumb. You usually make dozens of stupid choices before that voice in your head finally screams, "Just say no." So, I don't know if that makes me one of the lucky ones, still here while my two best friends aren't. I'm trying to decide, but it's a decision I'm not getting anywhere with. Fuck. Let me start over. My name is Tommy. I'm sure you're wondering why I'm telling you this, why you should care what some random 16-year-old kid has to say on the internet at 2 a.m. You've probably already left, scrolling for something more entertaining. But if you're still here, thank you. And if you dare to hear my story, I only ask that you refer to the link above before you proceed. It will all make so much more sense. I just can't shut my eyes. Every time I do, I see it. That smile. Those dead, fucking eyes. You sure? This is it, Casey, I whispered, clutching my backpack straps. My eyes darted from the road behind us to the park's remains. Its broken structures looked like the bleached ribs of some ancient dead monster. I didn't want to do this. My dad would kill me if I got caught trespassing. KC, though, practically bounced. Dude, obviously, this is prime urbex. Seriously, Tommy, you're going to back out now? After all that talk about adventures? He gestured at the slides, their silhouettes jagged against the distant town's dim glow. Besides, the homeless dude said, look for the section where the fence is pushed in. See? He pointed to a sagging section of chain link, an obvious entry point, the bent metal glinting, ominously in the moonlight. It's fine, bro. Nobody gives a shit anymore. Justin, ever the chill one, clapped me on the shoulder. He's right, man. It's just an abandoned water park. What's the worst that could happen? We trip over a rogue flip-flop? He let out a giggle, his phone already out, flashlight beam cutting a path through the gloom. It revealed glimpses of faded, peeling murals of cartoon animals. Their eyes seemed to follow us. I swore the smile on one faded octopus mural stretched before settling back into its original shape as I looked directly at it. All right, I mumbled, shaking my head. Casey grinned, pulling at the bent wire, widening the gap. Come on. First, one past the old concession stands gets bragging rights. We slipped through the fence one by one onto what used to be a busy pathway, now cracked and swallowed by weeds. The air hung heavy with the cloying scent of stale water and dying leaves. The once bright slides overhead now looked like the hollowed-out bones of something long dead. A coldness shot through me. This was nothing like the pictures. This was bizarre. The silence was absolute, broken only by our footsteps. Holy shit, Justin breathed, his phone flashlight slicing through the shadows. This is wild. Told you, Casey said, heading deeper into the park. He glanced back, a glint in his eye, stopping to hold the flashlight beneath his chin. The Maw, anyone? The Maw, the park's infamous final attraction. For months, our town whispered about it. Rumors flew, dark assumptions made about what had happened, why the park shut down. All anyone knew was that hell broke loose not long ago after Sterling bought the statue. Few people had ridden it, all with different experiences, and after a while it became more urban legend than something real. Since Sterling was gone, no one had answers, so everyone just had fun with it. I'd always been timid with spooky stories, so the thought of investigating the legend didn't sound super enticing. Maybe let's just stick to the regular slides, you. No for bragging rights. Justin just laughed, too loud in the oppressive silence around us. Now, where's the fun in that? Everyone knows the Maw's the real fucking reason to come here. He and KC sped up, their silhouettes swallowed by the darkness. Being left behind in the lobby felt worse than whatever was waiting inside. So I took a breath and caught up with them. We moved like ghosts. The lazy river was a green, thickened trench, its fountains dry and crusted. Plastic flamingos protruded from the ground, their colors faded to a sick off-white. The wave pool was a debris magnet, littered with sticks, leaves, and dead insects. Everything felt wrong, not just abandoned, but dormant, as if something was waiting, unfurling itself deep within its concrete veins, becoming aware of our presence. Then I froze, my light fixed on something ahead. Fucking shit, dude. There it was, looming in the distance, partially hidden in shadows, was a tall, twisting slide tube, cracked from top to bottom. Its bottom emptied into a circular pool, once filled with clear water, now an empty, gaping wound in the park's center. Even from where we stood, it was clear. It was an abyss. The sign above, bolted onto a steel pole, had triangular shapes carved out, resembling bite marks. A massive gray fin emerged from its top left corner. The letters, boxy and wide, peeked through dirt and dust, aged and faded shades of white and blue. "The Maw!" "Dude, no fucking way," Justin whispered, his jokes gone. "That slide's bigger than it looks in the pictures online." "I know," Casey breathed, awe in his voice. "You think it's still there, fellas? Only one way to find out." Justin's words felt hollow. Something was not right, but I couldn't back out now. They'd never let me forget it if I had come this far just to quit. All I could do was swallow my fear, trying to regain what little control I had. "Okay, but let's not get too close. Something in that pool smells really fucking bad." We crept closer, taking in the decrepit surroundings. As we passed the old ticket booth, a discarded mirror lay face up on the concrete, its glass cloudy and cracked. I looked down at my reflection and froze. For a fraction of a second, my features elongated, my jaw warped into a curled grin that stretched far beyond my ears, my teeth becoming sharp and jagged. I blinked. My reflection was normal. I snapped my neck to see if either of them had seen it, but they were already trailing ahead, their words prideful while discussing how awesome our story was going to be. We walked a few more yards towards the pool's edge. As we got closer, I noticed something. Low on the slide's decaying side, near where it emptied riders into the pool, was a small, dark stain. It wasn't algae or rust. It looked almost dark, like dried blood. I frowned, my gaze lingering on it, unease tightening in my throat. KC, though, was already focused on the pool's empty depth, his excitement overriding any sense of foreboding that only I felt. We reached the pool's edge, our flashlights dancing along the disgusting few inches of water that had stayed managed, through stay along the bottom. The water was still, an oily, gray-black color that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. As our trio of lights trailed along the floor, we saw it. And we couldn't believe what we were seeing. "Fuck you guys, it's actually still here." Casey's eyes were wide with excitement as we studied this thing. Even in its broken state, it was intimidating. Its skin, once a cool blue-gray, was now faded and streaked with orange rust like a forgotten tombstone. Real barnacles clung to its snout and dorsal fin, remnants from its aquatic origin of the lake. The water level was exactly where its jaw met the metal track beneath it, allowing us to see the rails. Its mouth was frozen in that creepy, disgusting smile. The eyes, black voids, seemed to stare directly at us. "Come on!" Casey squealed, starting to climb down using the ladder bolted to the pool's side. Justin was anything but enthusiastic about crawling into the sludge. "Casey, are you insane? Look at the water and flesh-eating bacteria, you dumb fuck!" "How else are we supposed to have proof we did this then, shit breath? We each take a picture with it. God, why did you two even agree to this? Tommy has been a spouting bitch fit since we got here. Now you're going to puss out too?" Justin and I locked eyes, neither of us wanting to step forward. But with shared hesitation, we nodded and slowly made our way to the ladder. As we got closer, the surface seemed to bulge inward near the center, like an eye slowly opening beneath the surface, before settling back into its oily flatness. I felt dizzy and could feel the acid burn the back of my throat as I choked back. The buffalo wings I had for lunch. "What the fuck am I doing here?" I murmured to myself. Every instinct screamed at me to climb back up, but Justin was already halfway down the ladder, grumbling about tetanus, and KC was losing his shit at the bottom, aiming his phone at the maw for all the TikToks he was going to make. "Dude, this is so fucking cool," KC called out. I forced myself down the cold, slimy rungs, my gaze fixed on the maw. Up close, it was grotesque. I almost felt ashamed for being scared of an inanimate object, but I couldn't help the dread I felt, that only kept getting stronger the longer I was in its presence. Justin moved closer, his feet sloshing as he nearly lost his balance. Jesus, it stinks and feels like snot! He was right. The smell was overpowering now, so much so that it made my throat burn. KC, oblivious as always, was already wrestling Justin into position. "Come on, Justin, put your head in its mouth." Justin grimaced but leaned in, positioning his head between the shark's jaws and held his breath from the smell. KC snapped a photo, the flash briefly illuminating the hollow of the pool, turning the maw into a grinning shadow puppet against the cracked concrete. Oh my God, if I edit this and add blood around your shoulder. Justin had finally had enough and cut him off as he walked back beside us, the maw just a few feet away, now invisible to us without our lights. "KC, it fucking stinks in here, man. Let's finish this bullshit and go before we'll die from Ebola or something." KC rolled his eyes as he ignored Justin's outburst and gestured at me to start moving. "Tommy, get your ass over there!" My legs felt heavy, as if the water was trying to pull me down. I took a reluctant step towards the maw. Its eyes seemed to draw me in. I stood 2 feet trying to look anywhere but its face and slowly leaned in, forcing a strained smile. The flash popped, blinding me for a moment. "Fuck yeah," Casey crowed, lowering his phone to review the shot. "Now we've got proof we were actually—" His voice hitched. His smile faded, his brows furrowed as I watched his face change. The air heavier, and I knew for certain that my gut had been right all along. Something definitely wasn't right. Of steel KC stood frozen, phone clutched, eyes locked on the screen. His body went rigid, his cocky smirk vanished, and it was replaced by horror. I glanced at Justin, who looked back at me, my thought zone reflecting back to me through his eyes. "KC," he said. "What's wrong?" KC didn't answer. He just stood there, still, rooted in the water, eyes wide, fixed on the photo. He breathed in, shallow, rapid gasps. I couldn't see the screen, but the fear radiating off KC was almost enough to make me run for the exit. Again, the sick smell intensified and stung in my nostrils. Then Casey lifted his phone, turning the screen just enough for us to see. There I stood next to the monster, but the photo had glitched. My face, my entire body, was a hazy blur, distorted just enough to know it's me, but my features were impossible to define. However, the maw was terrifyingly clear, the corners of its mouth revealing something that definitely wasn't there before. A coat of what looked like dripping saliva, glistening between rows of its bone-white teeth. A huge contrast from the decayed rust color we just saw in front of us. Its skin was now a vibrant and healthy gray, textured and slick, reflecting the bottom of the slide above us. It wasn't until I looked at the eyes that I felt the world and my heart stop simultaneously. Its eyes were now bright and alive, slightly squinted into a devilish shape, no longer the lifeless deadpan stare straight ahead. They were now at a downward angle, hyper-focused on one thing. And I was me. Justin began to laugh. "That's amazing, dude! Bravo!" KC was still frozen, eyes wide, staring at the photo in bewilderment. How do you even Photoshop something that fast? Justin, I swear I didn't do anything. His voice was cut off by a vibration that seemed to emanate from the ground beneath us. It was low, but it created a silence where you could hear a pin drop. As we huddled, we slowly lifted our lights back. Over to the maw. It stood there, its expression emotionless just as it had always had been. The eyes were dull. There was no glistening saliva, no sharp teeth, nothing. It was the feeling in the atmosphere that was suddenly different. The smell of decay was now overwhelming, not just from the water, but something deeper, muskier, like wet, rotting meat. And the silence wasn't just the absence of sound anymore. It was accompanied by a presence. A silence that felt like something was listening, holding its breath. "Let's get the fuck out of here." Justin's voice was less sarcastic, as he too clearly felt the shift in energy. KC, still clutching his phone, slowly, reluctantly, dragged his eyes away from the screen, his terror-stricken face finally breaking free from its stupor. Yeah, let's go. We shuffled backward, our eyes glued to the maw, unwilling to turn our backs on it. Every movement felt sluggish, the water clinging to us, resisting our escape. The putrid, rotting meat smell was now thicker than ever, and it tasted metallic on my tongue. My lungs burned with each breath. As we reached the opposite side, hoping for another way out, I slammed my hand against the cold concrete wall. It was just a curved, slick surface, impossible to climb. There was no other ladder, no indentations, nothing to grab onto. We were trapped. The air grew heavy, pressing down, making it hard to breathe. I swept my flashlight beam frantically around, the pool's rim, searching, pleading for an escape. But there was nothing. Just the walls, grime, and the darkness above, and as my light swept back towards the maw, I saw it. Just for a second, its eyes narrowed and the smile grew. It was gone a second moment later, but I know what I saw, and I knew what was happening. The maw was playing with us now, and it had just closed the last exit. Suddenly, the smell exploded. It punched into my nose, my throat, stealing the air. I doubled over, coughing, gagging on the taste. My eyes slammed shut, watering. At the same instant, a feeling of the most intense cold slammed into me. Bone-deep, paralyzing ice. My body spasmed, shivering violently, and my teeth chattered. The vibration escalated through the water, up my legs, into my skull. It was everywhere, disorienting me, blurring my thoughts. And then I dropped my phone, plunging myself into darkness. I stumbled, splashing water, my hands flailing in the void. The combined assault was too much, and I collapsed on my side in defeat. I lost all track of time, all sense of direction. I was a trembling mess struggling to breathe. Then, as suddenly as it came, the cold lifted. I stayed down on my side, still gasping and shaking. My eyes slowly fluttered open. I fumbled for my phone. When the screen flickered to life, its weak glow doing little to pierce the dark. The maw loomed, yards away, partially hidden in the shadows facing me. But the rest of the pool was empty. Justin and Casey were gone. No sound, no struggle, no trace. They had vanished. It was just me and the maw. My body felt numb and detached. The last thing I remembered was the cold, the darkness, the death stench, and then nothing. I don't know how long I was out. I honestly thought I was already dead. I blinked. My eyelids were so fucking gritty that it burned. I was lying in the filth, feeling it soaking through my clothes, and my head throbbed. I tried to sit up, but my muscles screamed in protest. Every movement sent a jolt of pain through my body. Then I heard it. Somewhere behind me I heard a splash, like something heavy falling into the water behind me, and it started to move towards me with purpose. Then, something moved. It dark, shape, just at the edge of my blurry vision. It was too large and solid to be debris. It was moving towards me, faster now, the sounds growing louder. I began to panic. I tried to scream, but my voice was too weak. My body wouldn't move or wouldn't respond. I was trapped, helpless, waiting for whatever was coming to get me. Oh my God, kid. Hey, kid! I thought I was hallucinating again. I heard a man's voice grow closer, and I felt two hands on my back as his silhouette came into view above me. Thank God. Don't worry, buddy, you're safe now, okay? Huh. I could only whisper. You and your friends are all over the news. I thought I was too late. But thank God you're alive. He embraced me not as any stranger would. I could tell that he knew. Somehow, he knew everything. I'm going. To get you out of here, but we have to go now. Where are the others? I don't know. We will find them, but we need to get out of the pool. Follow me. He led me to a ladder that we all must have missed in the chaos, but I could have sworn it wasn't there before. Just as the mysterious man helped me pull myself up and steady myself on my feet as we made our escape, we heard it. Coming from behind, where the man stood, a click. The undeniable sound of teeth clicking together. I could now see the man's face in the streaks of the light he was holding at his side. The horror in his eyes was one of familiar dread, as if he knew what was about to happen next. He had heard that sound before. Once again, the ground started to softly vibrate, and the same dark coldness from before began to rise around us. With Siu, a warning laced and desperate command, he spoke only one more word before the cold started to consume him. Run! Enjoy another amazing story. I painted a portrait of a woman in purple, a woman I've never met and never imagined. After what felt like months of creative block, she appeared on the canvas as though the spark that once brought me joy had ignited again, briefly, feverishly, in one night of inspiration. One moment, I was nothing. Then suddenly, I felt like something. When she stared back at me from the canvas, from her painted world. She wears a long dress the color of bruised blueberries, deep violet with undertones of black and shadow, like dried blood, beneath the skin. The fabric seems to flow, though I never painted motion into it, pooling at her feet and vanishing into the void from which she rises. Her figure is rough in places, like she's emerging from the canvas itself, unfinished and raw at the edges. But her face is something else entirely. It's sharply defined, eerily symmetrical, yet entirely unfamiliar. The skin is pale, not in a way that suggests illness, but as if it had never known sunlight. Her lips are tight, unsmiling, and her high cheekbones give her a regal, austere bearing. She doesn't look at you, she looks past you. Her eyes, the only part of her that gleams with life, are fixed somewhere just beyond the viewer. Cold, measured, maybe even disappointed. It's not beauty that caught me, but her gravity, her unknowable presence. She seems ancient, not in age, but in meaning, as though her expression has been held for centuries and only now remembered. I still can't place the emotion in her face. It's not quite contempt, nor sadness, nor anger. Something I didn't put there, but which appeared anyway. In that moment, I believed I had created something perfect. My own brief moment of transcendence, the divine inspiration, artist's dream. Of that was before I saw the gallery I'd submitted to. I drove to various art fairs and eventually submitted my piece to a small local gallery, one that specializes in showcasing new and emerging artists. Painters, sculptors, and artists alike send in their work to be viewed, admired, dissected, devoured by the public and critics in equal measure. Normally, once I've submitted a piece, I avoid these events. Part of it is anxiety, but mostly it's the fear that I'll unconsciously absorb someone else's vision, some image or style, and let it worm its way into my own work. It's foolish, I know. After all, what is art? If not a collage of ideas reimagined and made new, then I saw it. I was browsing through a cityscape, gray buildings under a waning moon, the sort of painting that hums with urban melancholy, when something caught my eye. A smear of color near the edge of the frame. Subtle. Almost hidden. A violet silhouette standing amid a crowd of faceless monochrome figures. A purple dress in a sea of black, gray, and white. The whole painting had touches of color to break the monotony. Warm glows in the windows, a splash of rust on a rooftop, the soft blue of night air. All the hues were restrained, carefully chosen, to blend into the palette. But this purple, felt deliberate, uninvited. I shook my head at the leap of logic, but the coincidences didn't stop. Out of the entire gallery of new submissions, around 30 pieces in total, 27, featured the same distinct hue of purple. At first I told myself it was a fluke. Purple isn't exactly a rare color in artistic palettes, but it wasn't just the shade, it was the shape, the brushwork, the placement. Again and again, my eyes were drawn to streaks and curves that mimicked the sweep of fabric, the fall of a dress. In one abstract piece, a storm of violent brushstrokes. Scattered across the canvas, the violet formed a curve through the chaos, almost like a figure caught mid-turn, her dress trailing behind. Another was a portrait, far more grounded, of a man seated in a lonely cafe. Reflected in the window behind him, barely visible, was the ghostly image of a woman walking past outside, her outline smudged, out of focus. Her dress, however, was a clear, unmistakable purple. Even the sculptures weren't exempt. One stood near the entrance, a twisting metallic form meant to resemble flowing water. But the artist had inlaid thin veins of colored resin along the folds, nearly all silver and steel tones, except for one thick ribbon of deep violet that coiled around the base like a hemline. Another sculpture, a jagged interpretation of a crowd in motion, bore a single figure tilted slightly away from the rest. Her form was only suggested by a sweep of bronze and an upturned hand, but draped across her shoulders, worked into the metal patina, was a faint stain of plum. I just couldn't stop seeing it. It's like once you've seen a certain pattern, your brain tries to find it everywhere. But no matter how much I tried to dismiss it, I kept returning to each piece, over and over, tracing the shape and color in the paint. But she was there, in nearly every piece. I managed to speak with one of the artists, a young woman in her 30s who had drawn, rather than painted, a striking depiction of a dog mid-stride. It was a beautiful piece, full of motion and life, but what held my attention was the figure in the background, a familiar shape standing still and silent. I asked her plainly where the inspiration had come from. She paused only briefly, then offered a simple shrug. I don't know. One night I just had this image in my head and I had to get it out. I held her gaze a moment longer, then pointed to the figure tucked away behind the dog, barely more than an outline, except for the splash of color. But why purple? I asked slowly. She turned to the drawing, tilting her head as if seeing it anew. The dress was the only colored element in the entire piece. The rest was black and graphite, charcoal and smudge, yet the fabric glowed with a rich, velvety hue. She blinked, then smiled faintly. "Why not purple?" she said. I left her before I said too much, before I let the realization spill from my mouth and poison her peace of mind. But the weight of it clung to me all the same. I tried to shake it, to rationalize it, but the paranoia had already taken hold. I took my painting from its place, suddenly gripped by the desire to hide it, to hide her. I left the gallery as though I were fleeing, as though by removing the piece I might prevent others from acquiring some terrible esoteric knowledge, something not meant for the average eye. By the time I returned home that evening, the images of the day flooded my mind in a relentless assault. The streets, the people, the traffic, the cacophonous orgy of human industry buzzed and blurred before my eyes, each mundane detail somehow sharper, more menacing, as though the world itself were mocking me for noticing. I waited. Perhaps a day, perhaps longer, I can't be sure. I covered her in the studio and lay sleepless, staring at the ceiling, the memory of her gaze drilling into my thoughts. I couldn't rest. I had to know. I went online and searched the gallery's website. I combed through the submissions, flicking through artist bios and their exhibited works. One by one, the connections revealed themselves. Sculptures, paintings, sketches, all bearing some trace of her, and all created within the same narrow stretch of time, a single week. I sat there, for hours, maybe longer, my thoughts circling like vultures. I could feel her presence from beneath the dust sheet in the studio, as though her eyes still stared through the layers of fabric. I retrieved my diary and checked the date I had signed the piece, my so-called magnum opus. It fell within that very same week. It was too much. I abandoned the thought, tried to let the fear fade, to smother the cold dread that had begun to take root in my chest, but it wouldn't go. It gnawed at me, quietly, relentlessly, from the back of my skull. What did it mean? It had to mean something. It was too close, too specific, too precise to be coincidence. I let the sound of the news play in the background. As I delved deeper, my white noise security blanket to keep the silence from feeding her stare any more than it already did. The usual litany of horrors, the terrors humanity inflicts upon itself, droned on from the screen: war, famine, murder, collapse. Always the same. I began my search for the woman in purple. My initial results were frustratingly vague. Search engines gave me nothing but heavily edited photographs of skeletal women draped in garish clubwear, cheap fabric dyed in all the wrong shades of violet. I had to be specific. I looked for artworks, murals, sculptures of the woman in purple. I saw specific renditions of that, but it wasn't correct. It wasn't right. I went further back, into older artworks, folklore, forgotten stories. I don't know how long I spent trawling through archives and obscure forums, chasing shadows in digital catacombs. I barely slept. I barely ate. I just kept going. Eventually, something surfaced. A thread. Perhaps it was confirmation bias. Maybe I was clinging to the one scrap of information that suited my growing hypothesis, but it fit. It slid into place like the missing puzzle piece to an unknowable question. It was a mural. Old enough that no one seemed to agree where it came from. A forgotten piece tucked away in an abandoned community center somewhere, photographed once for a now-defunct local blog. No artist credited, no records, just a single image and a caption that read, "Untitled, 14th century." Artistically, it was stunning, meticulous, every brushstroke deliberate, every detail sharp. But the subject matter was wrong. It depicted a desolate world drained of color and life. A graying, sunless wasteland stretched from edge to edge, as if scorched by some forgotten cataclysm. The earth was fractured, jagged fault lines spiderwebbing across the barren ground like veins beneath diseased skin. From these ruptures rose gouts of smoke, thick and oily, pulsing upward as though exhaled by something alive beneath the surface. The cracks looked like incisions made to bleed the planet dry. And bleed it did, seeping a black ichor that glistened unnaturally under a sky that held no sun, no stars, just a pallid sheen of oppressive gray. In the haze above, immense shapes, coiled within the clouds, too large, too abstract to grasp. Their forms weren't fully rendered, just hinted at in swirling smears of darkness, as if the artist couldn't, or wouldn't, paint them clearly. You couldn't quite see them, and yet they were there, watching. Every angle of the mural seemed to draw your gaze to their presence, no matter how desperately you tried to look away. The entire piece had the unsettling quality of a dream you half remember upon waking, a sense of truth embedded in unreality. A silent scream, and there, in the midst of it all, stood a figure, small, almost insignificant. A woman in a flowing purple dress, placed so precisely in the center that your eyes were drawn to her. She did not belong. And yet she fit too well. Once I found it, I noted the estimated date and documented it carefully. That was the first thread. From there, I pulled, and what unraveled was horrifying. Another painting surfaced, this one a grand family portrait, the kind meant to immortalize prestige. The brushwork was masterful. Velvet textures shimmered in the candlelit illusion. Silverware caught glints of unseen light, and the floor beneath their polished shoes seemed to stretch into infinity. It was a celebration of inherited grace, except for one figure. The lady of the house stood at the center, commanding the composition. Her gown was unmistakably violet, cascading in rich folds like crushed silk or bruised twilight, the only vibrant hue in the otherwise muted palette. But her face was absent. Not erased or unfinished, simply a void. A perfectly circular, impossibly black aperture, so dark it felt dimensional. A negative space that devoured light, bleeding the pigments of the painting into its orbit. It wasn't just the canvas. It was the world around her collapsing inward. As though the painter, knowingly or not, had captured a singularity. Not merely facelessness, but obliteration. A visual wound. The painting was signed and dated, 1666. Another surfaced, 1914, titled The Violet Witness. Then a sculpture, 1929, then 1939, 1986, 2001, each one depicting her, or something close. Not always the subject, not always in clarity, but always present somewhere within the art. And finally, I found a photograph, a candid moment, a tourist photo found in a digital archive. A family of 4 stands together, smiling stiffly in front of a low concrete wall, the backdrop a lovely coastal view. It appeared to be taken in Japan. A few dark clouds gather in the distance. The father wears a tucked-in polo, the mother a floral print blouse. The children, mid-laughter, caught in the blur of motion. It's ordinary, innocent. The kind of image you'd find in any photo album, but something lingers at the far edge of the frame. Just behind the youngest child's shoulder, half obscured by the angle, is a smear of color. A graffiti tag, rough and fast as though scrawled in haste. Violet purple, bright and defiant. Not a word, not a symbol, just a mark, a stroke, a stain. The hue is the same. And the abstract shape has a strange, flowing quality, like something mid-movement or mid-emergence. I checked the timestamp in the digital archive. 10th March, 2011. I stared at the dates for a long time. All marked by that same violet stain. By her. It felt like a punch to the chest. I now listen to the news, wondering what is to happen, wondering if I can change something, if I should try to warn someone, anyone. But what use is that? Would they believe me? That a color, a face, a figure haunts the brushes of painters and the minds of creatives? That she appears like a stain on the world, moments before it bleeds? That she's watching us now, waiting? They'd call it madness. They'd call me mad, and maybe I am. The news crackles in the background, another crisis brewing, another conflict flaring, another tremor beneath the surface. I stare at the canvas I've kept covered, now uncovered again, just to look, just to know. And she stares back. There's something in her eyes now. I can finally see it. Not contempt, not sadness or anger, inevitability. Thanks for diving into this story with me. Don't miss out on the next one. Hit that subscribe button. Give this video a big thumbs up and drop a comment below with your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think.